clarification purposes. So if I could ask Councillor Rochon to give us the motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
Be it resolved that the Finance and Administration Committee meeting agenda of January 8, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe that was seconded by Councillor Myers. Was there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, calling the question, those in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. Would any member have disclosure of any pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4 and item 4.1, which would be nominations for the position of chair. Would I have any nominations for the position of chair?
Aye. Oh, we're not. I'll nominate Terry Myers to be chair.
Moved by Mayor Dion. Would there be a seconder to nominate? Seconded by Councillor Rochon. Call for additional nominations. Second call for additional nominations. And a third and final call for additional nominations. Seeing none, I declare Councillor Myers as the acclaimed chair of the Finance and Administration Committee. Councillor Myers, you have the chair.
Thank you. I'm just going to really move around and do it from here. Thank you. I think. So item 5 on our agenda is the approval of the committee minutes from September 4th. Obviously that was from the previous council, but Dion, can we move that?
Yes, I'll move that be resolved that the minutes of the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of September 4, 2018, as printed and circulated to all members of the committee, be approved.
So are there any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approving the minutes as presented? Thank you. That's carried. So now we get into the meat of the business for tonight. Item 6.1 is the 2019 proposed capital and operating budgets. Sorry.
Carry on.
I was, just to stick to some kind of process, if I could ask for a mover and seconder just to put we have a draft motion on the table. I think out of discussion, we may want to change what's in that. We'll see, but for procedure, if we could put that motion on the table and then speak to it with the budget presentation and so on. Councilor Rochon, would you?
I don't think that it should go to council yet. Like I said,
Sorry. So just as a procedural, I have some thoughts about what's in the motion as well. Just as a procedural thing, I think that we need a motion on the table before we.
this is the motion to put it to council right now.
Yeah, but then we can vote on that.
Can we deny that and then discuss it? Like, why would we pass it in there?
No, we're not going to pass it. We're just going to put the motion on the table and then we're going to have the discussion,
Okay.
which I expect will be lengthy tonight. So
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hearing the discussion from members, might I recommend that just put the motion forward to receive at this point?
Just right.
And then you have a motion on the floor that you could potentially add to if you wish.
Excellent suggestion. So if we move, Councilor Rochon, if you're comfortable with that, it would just be up to this point then.
Be resolved that report 2019, FY1, 2019 proposed municipal operating capital budget revised, including the 2019 proposed estimates for the water and sewer operations be received.
Thank you. Now we can, I'm not sure exactly what staff had in mind as far as presentations tonight, how we got here?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, and I can certainly defer to the treasurer once we go from a very high level. So the process began in September. The Finance Administration Committee recommended to Council that the cost of living target be used as the baseline by staff to construct the 2019 proposed operating capital budget. Staff went to work, they put together the capital budget, and what we look for is various funding sources for various projects. And if you look at the capital budget, you'll actually see a number of various funding sources. And one of the things that we try to do with respect to the capital budget is target municipal, provincial, and federal financing to fund the projects identified within there. So if you look at one of the public works projects, Brockhouse Way, it's a rather substantial project that we're looking for substantial provincial funding for. If that funding isn't received, that project won't proceed. So that's the type of philosophy we put in place with respect to the capital budget. And one of the things we tried to implement over the last 4 years is make sure that the capital projects are fully funded, whether it's from tax support, from reserves, or from grant funds, or debt financing. So that's one of the things that the municipality has been successful at over the last 4 years, as well as debenturing $2.5 million worth of unfinanced capital, which had been sitting on the books since approximately 2013. So right now, this council is starting with a clean slate, with reserves, with debt financing. The treasurer will address it. The ministry does have a little bit of concern with respect to the debt load compared to the revenue taxation. They want us to be very cognizant of that, as well as making sure that we are continuing to be cognizant of the reserves and looking to build those reserves. With respect to the operating budget, staff looked at the operating budget. The treasurer put together the numbers and the estimates, and there was a number of areas that contributed to the recommendation on December 12th that the budget be received by council and referred to the Finance and Administration Committee, with staff looking at refinements and reductions from the proposed 5.89% down to the 2.5% cost of living. Staff has a budget right now of 3.23%, my apologies, 3.23% that they have this evening that they're recommending to council. We also have a further reduction that we're going to recommend that approximately $5,000 be removed from the emergency preparedness budget as a result of our community emergency management coordinator not coming back, and we'll look to reallocate those responsibilities within the organization. And what we're also recommending is that areas outside of the auspices of council be sent back to the Police Services Board to look for some refinements there as well. As a result of the Police Services budget coming in within the target, but it was predominantly it was predominantly because of the fact that council removed $60,000 lease cost, and staff has recommended the $31,000 administration fee for administering the books and payroll and finances for the Police Services Board be removed. So the Police Services Board has actually increased their request to council, and staff is recommending that everybody share in the cost efficiencies to look at giving the taxpayers a cost of living increase the taxes that is shared throughout the entire municipality. So that's the high-level view. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we can turn to the treasurer for a little bit more detail if you would like that at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Well, again, before we get into, I expect there will be lots of questions, and maybe I'm kind of jumping too far ahead, but I'm wondering, perhaps the treasurer or Mr. McGee, or perhaps through you, the treasurer could take us through the final part, the final few paragraphs of the report, the actual budget report from tonight. Sorry. That's a open-ended kind of statement. I'm looking at page 13 of 82 on the report regarding municipal tax. There's a lot of percentages and a lot of percentages thrown around. I'm wondering if, as I said, Mr. McGee, either yourself or the treasurer could take us through this portion regarding municipal tax and the impact of new assessment growth.
Certainly. So one of the things I can provide at a very high level and then turn it over to the treasurer as it is his report. With respect to new assessment growth, so for instance, in high growth municipalities where you'll have many residential units, units added to the municipality on a regular basis, what the municipality will do is use those new revenues as an opportunity for increased costs relating to the servicing of those new units. What we call that is natural growth. So I believe what the treasurer is referencing is there is a natural growth component to Deep River that is over and above what the increase or impact would be to the taxpayers. And those natural growth impacts can potentially subsidize existing taxpayers or can be used for the growth for services. So for instance, development charges, which the town of Deep River doesn't have, are a tool that are used to finance capital expenditures in the future. For instance, if Deep River was in need of a new library in the next 25 years, new development could be added, lot levies or development charges that were actually reserved for those specific purposes. Development charges study is required under the Act, and it is a comprehensive process. A lot of municipalities perceive it to be a growth killer, an anti-development tool. And for a municipality like Deep River that has very low growth, it may not be something that council wishes to entertain at this time, but the natural growth component is something that council can potentially utilize as an opportunity for new revenues in that area when somebody builds a house or renovates or adds on or something like that. So, Mr. Dean, care to elaborate on your percentages and your numbers in specific?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I believe that you referenced page 7 of my report.
I was looking at page 13.
Says the title with municipal tax.
Yes, sorry, yeah. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
page
that,
7.
sorry, on mine it's 13 of 82, but I see there's page 7, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, as I stated in my report, that at this point we are presenting the budget, that how much it will cost to run the municipality. Once we determine that amount, two other factors that will come into consideration is PAL education portion and OMPF. Both of these numbers are not confirmed yet. So once we have those confirmed numbers, then we can determine exact impact on the tax rate, if you will. So at this point, I think the idea is to confirm the number, that how much it takes to run the municipality, and then tax rate that I have identified here is just an estimate at this point. If my numbers for PAL and OMPF are bang on, by chance, which will not happen, then our positive number at the end of the year will be 45,106. In other words, if we do not change, if these numbers come as I stated, and we do not raise taxes, we will end up with $45,106 surplus.
If the numbers are correct and we do not raise taxes,
Yes.
we would still, everything being perfect, we would have a small surplus.
$45,000, yes.
When do you have those numbers for sure?
Ministry of Finance normally issue their tax rates sometime January, end of January, and sometime it goes to 10th of March.
Okay, sorry, as I say, I just wanted to get like a broad kind of picture of where we're at. So, we have an awful lot of material in front of us between tonight's report plus the estimates that were presented to council in December. Let's just dive in. Meredith, do you have some questions
I
for
do.
staff, comments? Sorry, I should ask, sorry, Mr. McGee, I'm not sure if you had any specific, was there any planned kind of presentation other than the quick run-through that we just kind of did?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Dean can elaborate on the specific details of his report and give kind of an overview of his report on the areas of highlight.
Certainly, Mr. Dean.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, you received a broader picture from Mr. McGee, and to add to that, let's let's not focus too much on the tax rate at this point, that's what I will say. Budget guideline asks us to present a budget with cost of living increase. Cost of living is 2.5. Right now you have the budget that is 3.23. Having $5,000 down, you are looking for a further reduction of almost $44,000. So in our report that we are suggesting that this 49,000 that previously we were short of from the budget guideline can be recouped, or at least we can ask Police Services Board to kind of revisit their budget and try to find some cost efficiencies. So we will be compliant to the budget guidelines that is proposed by the council.
And maybe I can highlight that, Mr. Chairman, from a police services perspective, the Police Services Act is very specific with respect to the authority that council has over the police service. Council can only ask the Police Services Board to review their budget and to increase, reduce, or to provide some additional level of service that council would like to see and pay for. So for instance, if council said, you know what, we really want to see foot patrols and X number of foot patrols. I've been involved where there's been visibility programs and we take an additional $50,000 a year. That's the purview, and that's why we've structured the motion to be very non-specific and ask the Police Services Board to review the expenditures, looking for a reduction with a targeted number. But you couldn't say, we want you to reduce
A certain line.
Correct. Correct. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman?
Yes? Yes, yes. Thanks. Good. All right, so back to kind of square one. Mayor Dion, did you have specific, well, did you have questions? I'm sure we have lots to discuss tonight.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure where,
I guess I have notes or questions as we go through, so would it be best to, if I identify your question, Councilor
I think
Roshan, or she may have the same question, or
Certainly,
yourself,
yeah.
and we can kind of go through
Yeah.
each one. Do you want to go through A to I first, or do you want to go through the
I think
actual staff report?
my suggestion would be that we leave the recommendations
Okay.
and next steps essentially to the end.
Okay. The first one that struck me was the contingency and sick reserves. And the item that to pay out outstanding accumulated sick hours, and there's a budget for that. And I guess I was surprised that the municipality pays out sick hours. To me, that isn't something that normally is done in the workplace. So I would ask staff to explain, if they could, how the sick leave works and why we're budgeting to pay out the sick hours. And normally, those are an entitlement you would get paid for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to committee. So the town of Deep River has an accumulative sick leave program, and Mayor Dion is correct that it's a program that was used extensively up until probably the 70s, and many entities, including private and public sector organizations, were looking to divest themselves of it because there is a liability associated with it. As the chair knows, the auditor identifies this on an annual basis, that liability is underfunded, and we've been working to try and put that money away so that there is sufficient funds if the municipality were to close the doors tomorrow and had to pay out that entire liability. The way it works is Deep River has had an accumulated sick leave program where every full-time employee is given 18 sick days per year. So those sick days are accumulative, and they are permitted to utilize 18 per year or whatever is in their sick leave bank if they require them. Those 18 days are added together in a cumulative bank throughout the entire employment term of the employee. And if the employee leaves the employ of the organization, they are paid a lump sum payment of 50% of their entire sick leave bank to a maximum of 1 year's sick leave. So what that means is that if an employee makes $50,000 annually, they would be compensated for 6 months, which would be $25,000. So that sick leave entitlement is in place of any type of short-term, long-term disability. It's the only kind of sick leave disability program that the municipality has. The municipality would like to convert that, but it would require negotiations with the different labor groups in the municipality to transition it from where it is now to a long-term disability, short-term disability program. So that is one of the areas that the treasurer is looking at, but it is a relatively complex issue and will require many stakeholders to be involved to actually present this to council.
Okay, thank you. I understand it now. I'm surprised that we still have this. I've never heard of this in the last 20 years. That is a surprise.
It is something that we have looked at, I think both of the last 2 terms of council. Yes.
So,
There are, as Mr. McGee says, there are significant negotiations around that. And I think the last time we looked at it, there was a potential for a significant upfront cost in regards to, like, there's the benefit of then
not having.
not having that ongoing liability, so, but it's certainly an issue for the town, yes.
Okay.
Can I speak on that matter?
Councilor
The
McLaren?
long-term, short-term disability we had when I first started as employment in the county of River, it was council that came to the unions and recommended that we move to what we have today. For the simple fact, when you had a short-term disability, your first 3 days of sick time, you never get paid for it. So if you're going to be off sick for 2 days, you never get paid for it. So you make sure you're off sick for 3 days. And you only got 66% of your salary. So we're paying into an insurance plan that didn't want to pay you out. So it was at the recommendation of council at the time that we accumulated sick time. And this accumulated sick time we have now, I think is very beneficial to the employees and to the employer. When I left my employment, I had over 2 years of sick time built up. I didn't abuse that, and like a lot of people do, they'll go and use it all after their last year of employment, take 6 months of sick time and they're not sick. I give back over a year and a half of sick time to the municipality that I didn't use. I get paid over 6 months at the maximum. So I think we need to tread very light on this, and it protects the employees for their pension and for continuity in payment, in your paying stuff. That's not, you're not waiting 2 months to get long-term disability or short-term disability. I think it's.
I appreciate your comments, Councilor McLaren. I think the discussion about the merits of the program are really for another time. Right now, I mean, it's just a recognition that we do have a liability for that. That's a current budget issue. Mary, did you, or Councilor Rocha, let's,
Did you have anything else to add?
Mary,
There was a reduction in the volunteer firefighters budget because their number reduced from 24 to 20. So my question was there not an intent to get back to a full complement within the year? So was it wise to reduce that amount?
Mr. McGee, perhaps through you to.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I think the chief would love to answer that question.
The number of 24 volunteers was a target, and the number that was presented was, I would use the word guesstimate at how many we need. After this first run of training with the volunteers, we started out with 12, and we're down to 9 right now. And a target for training volunteers at class size and equipment and person for 2019. It was the route for the budget and also for the ability of our group to train the staff. They're too big a class is more burden, and it was simpler. If in 2020 we decide we want to go to 24, we can always go up another 4. Or next fall.
No, okay, Mayor Galen, sorry.
I had a few here, and then I had some other separate ones, but,
That's good.
there were comments in the budget, that the budget includes, and I did try and get a little explanation on this before this meeting, the budget includes water and sewer, which are funded, probably Mr. Dean can explain this, but our water and sewer costs are funded separately from fees. The budget includes water and sewer expenses, and then there is a statement such that, however, the increase in certain areas were not directly controllable, such as the aqua contract is an increase of 3%. So I would think that that contract increase goes against the water and sewer budget. And overall, is that water and sewer budget in the 2.5% area despite the 3%, or is it higher? I guess does that make sense, my question?
I think so, you're wondering whether
Can it be,
essentially whether the water and sewer costs
or is
that are
yeah.
noted here, do they impact the operating budget, the 2.5%, where the,
yes, are they,
what we're currently at
are
3.23%?
they impacting, and is our revenue covering our expenses for water and sewer?
Right. Sir, Mr. Dean?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee, I'm very pleased to hear this answer. Thank you very much for such avid reading. Absolutely true. It is mentioned, we are presenting all the budget in one document, water, sewer, capital, and operating budget. So I had no option but to add this comment, but right on, water is not subsidizing the taxpayers or vice versa. Water is funded by the ratepayers separately, and this 3% increase is still within, we still have room in water that it is not impacting. Did I answer your question?
Yes, so the water and sewer budget is within the cost of living,
Correct.
despite the offset cost.
So maybe I'd like to follow up just with a question, just to clarify for people. I don't know whether this ever happened. At one time, the province was going to pass legislation that it was absolutely illegal to cross-subsidize water and sewer operations from tax revenues. I don't know whether that ever actually happened, but just to clarify, there is no, I think that's the discussion we just had, there is no, the water and sewer budgets have no impact on municipal property taxes. Is that correct? They are totally separate. Water and sewer operations are funded by the billing for water and sewer rates.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and to enlighten everybody on the Sustainable Water and Wastewater Act of 2002, that's the legislation that received first, second, and third reading. It never received royal assent. And what exactly it said was that municipalities could not use any other revenues other than water and sewer revenues for the purposes of water and sewer projects. So it meant that the Bombers Bay residents that don't receive water and sewer did not have to pay for the water and sewer services in the town of Deep River. What happened as a result of that legislation, a lot of municipalities just adopted that philosophy and said it's not fair for those folks that have to pay for the well and their septics to have to subsidize people that receive those services. And that's why the Treasury and Public Works keep it entirely separate, and the users of the water and wastewater services entirely fund those projects. There is a little bit of crossover when it comes to capital projects, and Mr. Patterson and his engineers, when they divvy up the costs associated with the water pipe, the sewer pipe, the pavement, the curb, the staff time, but there is a strong rationale, and as as the committee may see in the capital budget, staff is recommending a water and sewer rate study so that we can actually rationalize that with a strong financial plan put forward by an organization like CN Watson, working in conjunction with staff and engineers, so that it is a defendable, irrefutable rate study that makes sure the monies are going to be available. And that will also give the justification for setting the rates for water and sewer in the future. We did it in-house the last time it was required in 2015, but because of the changes in water and wastewater and the addition of CNL and the water line to the site, it makes a whole lot of sense that we get a company in to look at that very categorically.
Thank you.
It's a sort of a broader question, and I don't know if it's a standard thing to show the two budgets separately, and I don't know if that's something that can be done or if that's not typical.
So I think, so what has